Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another Box Office Live session here in partnership with the icta. We're here with another webinar with our colleague Frank Tees from Moving Image Technologies and my colleague from Box Office Pro, Rebecca Polly, here on the background as well. Wanted to welcome everyone here as we approach, month 6, month X of the recovery effort, little by little, but I'm glad to see a lot of these innovations that everyone here has been working on really come to fruition. So a couple of ground rules before I send it over to Frank. You will see the chat box where you can talk, say nice things about everybody. If you say mean things, especially offensive things, I'll go in there and kick you off, so please don't make me do that. But if you have any questions that you'd like to ask during this session, go ahead and you'll find on the right-hand portion of your screen a questions panel where you can go in, ask your question. Now, we'll try to answer as many of those questions during the session. Anything that we don't get to, we will be following up on the icta website and on a special editorial coverage over at boxofficepro.com. And yeah, without any further ado, Frank, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. It's good to see so many familiar names coming through the platform right now. Thank you very much to Box Office Pro for hosting us today. And we're going to be talking about drive-in and pop-up cinema. So let's get to the slideshow. And so we've got Back to the Future, how drive-ins and pop-up cinemas complement the movie-going experience in the COVID-19 aftermath. My name is Frank Tees. I'm Vice President of the icta and VP of Technical Sales Support at Moving Image Technologies. So the icta, for those of you who don't know, I think most of you do, we're the International Cinema Technology Association, which is a global network of professionals in the motion picture industry. Members of the icta are those professionals and companies that manufacture, service, create, and sell and use the equipment that goes into movie theaters. For more information or to join, feel free to see our website, icta-web.com. So everybody out there, no need to say this, but we miss you. All of the members of the icta consider you, all of our partners in cinema, exhibition, content, service, manufacturing, innovation, and support, not only our friends, but part of our family. We are all here for each other during this intermission in our business and personal lives, and we eagerly hope to support you and to see all of you as the curtain rises again in your theaters, at trade shows, and in person coming soon. All right, so in the past Reboot Camp webinars available on our website, we've discussed how to restore technology to full operation, safety practices, and products to support the openings in considerations when redesigning our cinemas post-pandemic. So today, some of the earliest of us to reopen in exhibition are those operating the traditional drive-in cinema. Drive-in cinemas have been around since the 50s and have allowed the movie-loving public to enjoy cinemas from the comfort of their beloved automobiles. The United Drive-In Theater Owners Association is the premier organization serving drive-in theater owners. So quoting some stats from the UDTOA website, industry resources list the high figure for drive-ins as 4,063 in 1958. In 78 and through 88, that time period was particularly hard on the industry with over 1,000 screens closing. Closings were commonly due to land value increases that made selling for redevelopment attractive financially, aging owners who wish to retire, difficulty obtaining first-run product during the time period, and increasing entertainment options such as video, multiplexes, and other activities. But by the 1990s, new drive-ins were being built and reopenings were becoming more common. The numbers have leveled off from the rapid drop in the 80s. Some owners who want to retire now are seeking other operators to purchase it and keep it as a drive-in instead of selling the property for development. Though drive-in numbers will never be as high as they were in the 50s, although that may change, the industry seems to be on an upswing. And as of October 2019, there are 300 theater locations, drive-in theater locations in the USA, 549 total screens. So drive-in cinemas have been able to open earlier in most areas post-COVID due to the natural distancing and due to the fact that moviegoers feel safe in their vehicles. Drive-ins have enjoyed the top spots in U.S. grosses for months now. Due to the success of drive-ins across the country, we've seen many pop-up drive-in cinemas in fields, parks, and indoor cinema parking lots. These cinemas utilize screens that are temporarily rigged on truss, structure, or inflatable, or even secured to the exterior of the indoor cinema. Projectors are set up in trailers or shipping containers for a booth, and in some cases run entirely on generators. So our first interview that we have today is John Vincent, who's the president of the United Drive-In Theaters Association, operator of the Wellfleet Cinemas, which is a drive-in and indoor cinema and entertainment complex. And he's being interviewed by Doug Sabin, vice president and COO at American Cinema Equipment. And you might see me in there also.
I'd like to introduce John Vincent. He's president of UDITOA, and he has drive-in, walk-in, and putt-putt golf, which I'm going to have him tell us about his setup there. It's kind of neat. It's an entertainment complex in Cape Cod, Mass. And he's been a big partner of ours. So I want to introduce him and have him tell us about UDITOA and kind of his life.
Sure. Thank you, Doug. I actually got started in this industry in 1987 as a ticket seller at the drive-in, and eventually in my college years and in between time in Marine Corps Reserve, ended up becoming the manager of the indoor cinemas the summer of '89, and continued to manage off and on between the drive-in and the cinemas in the summers. We're in a high tourist area. I ended up coming here full time in the mid 90s and became one of the partners in 1997 and increased my ownership. I'm the biggest owner here and the principal in Wellfleet. And also parallel to that, got involved with UDITOA just as a regular member and went to the first convention, about 20 years ago, and ended up becoming a director and president about 10 years ago. And helped steward the drive-in industry through the digital transition, thanks to our partners that are members of your organization. That was the biggest concern about 10 years ago, is surviving the transition to digital, and we had a lot of help from your members, along with NATO and the CBG and other entities like sorry, you're gonna have to give me a minute. Who helped the VPFs? Maybe you can cut this, Frank. Yes, Cinedyne. Yes, Cinedyne was a great help. We appreciate their efforts too. But anyway, that's all pre-COVID, and then obviously once COVID hit, I had to shut my indoor down mid-March, like everyone else, and and we always knew that the drive would be open first, and that UDITOA's efforts turned, along with regional NATO's and NATO's efforts turned to getting the drive-ins open, because we knew that was the going to be the first thing that's going to be allowed to be open because of the built-in social distancing. And so we fought and lobbied various states, both at an individual level and a trade organization level, to get open. New York was probably, I don't want to say the hardest, but it was probably the most important for the drive-ins to get open, and other states followed, as is the case today. We're really trying for the indoors to get New York open so that we can have some better showings. Yeah, product. So, but anyway, so I talked to a bunch of drive-in operators yesterday in a call. We've had weekly calls up until June, and then we suspended them because we all got too busy running our own operations with new complications in some areas, some cases short-staffed. So, we had to suspend our weekly calls, although, the ICA has continued them, NATO has continued them, and I know NAC has, and you guys probably have to continue the constant communication. And we just picked that back up on the drive-in side. So it was the first chance I got to really speak with a number of operators and how their summer went. And it runs the gamut, believe it or not. Me here in Wellfleet, I'm actually down. I know it's hard to believe, but I'm thankful for that. Trust me, I know many businesses, restaurants, bars, nightclubs, and of course indoor cinemas are really hurting. And my indoor cinema is no exception. It had zero revenue this summer, but my drive-in's down because of the capacity limitation. We could only do 50%, and me being in a tourist area, I typically run over 50%. Many drive-ins actually were down because they do a significant chunk of business in March, April, May, and for the most part, many of those months were lost in various states, so they were down for that. I have other operators telling me that they did it quite well. So it does run the gamut. Again, we're just ecstatic to provide the entertainment and, quote unquote, as you implied, Doug, in an earlier conversation, carry the flag for the industry. We were very pleased to do so. So I guess that's a quick overview, and see if you guys have any thoughts or questions, and we can carry the conversation.
Frank, did you have one? I have. So I was going to ask, do you see any permanent design changes since COVID's here now? COVID will eventually, not go away, but become the norm, and will stop some of this. But is there going to be permanent design changes in your world because of that?
I don't know. I mean, if I look at like my drive in particular, 1957, very typical build. If there's always would be, if I were to build from scratch, there's things I would do differently anyway. If you're asking if there's changes due to COVID specifically, I think if you were to build the facility from scratch, you would probably have social distancing or ability to do so in mind. One thing that's kind of out in the air, I believe, I'm self-service cafeteria style on my drive-in snack bar pre-COVID. Post-COVID, we just did a service window, and we provided everything to customers. There was no cafeteria style. So I'm wondering when and if or how the self-service model, is that going to return? Is that going to take 2 years, a year and a return, maybe 2022? I don't know. And maybe the NAC guys be more inclined to answer that one. But so that's the number one thing right there. I think is self-service out for a while. We debated before we decided to go all exterior, not let the customers in at all. We knew right away we were going to at very least have to turn our soda machines around and have our staff serve the soda. That was going to be the number one thing that was going to go. And the same with the popcorn, and they pick in a normal year for us, they pick the fries and they pick the burgers off the line. Obviously COVID, that's out. So I'm wondering how much of that's going to change. If you were to lay the field out from scratch, I probably, COVID aside, might have more space between the cars to allow them to spread out their lawn chairs a little better anyway, because that was not in mind in the 50s. In the 50s and the 60s, customers primarily stayed in their car. They were, cars were much more friendly back then in terms of not only everything but the lights and radio, but also just viewing angles from within the car. They were actually a little better. So you've seen a huge change to people sitting in lawn chairs, and when you're really tight, like Wellfleet is, in a typical summer, there's only room for like 4 lawn chairs in front, and if you have a large family, that usually presents a problem. So, I might, redesigning Wellfleet, have a different space between my speaker poles. But aside from that, I don't see any big changes to the industry in terms of how we run our operations, because we're just built for it, built for people having their own private space.
Do you think you might go later in the year? Or you think it's worth it to run your businesses later into the year?
Some drive-ins probably are. I am not. We are in a tourist area and are losing a significant chunk of our population that makes the drive-in viable. So, I mean, the Outer Cape here where I'm at goes from some 80,000 people down to 40, or even less, maybe more like 100 down to 40,000. And we're finding with families wanting to get back into some sort of routine for school, at least in my area, I'm seeing some softening already on the grosses. And my area in particular, and this is not really applicable to the rest of the United States, let's say, but because I'm in a tourist area, I have, there's a huge labor shortage out here. Many restaurants that are out in this area have had to close 2 days a week because they simply can't get the staff. My area is also dependent on the foreign visas called the J1 Summer Work Program, where college kids from Europe and other countries come over and work for us for a short bit and then go back to their home countries, and that really put a lot of strain on the workforce out here. And on top of that, I also was faced with regular departures of my snack bar manager was a snowbird and other things that were pre-planned, pre-laid in. So this is the last weekend for Wellfleet Drive-In. We'll close down and then hopefully be able to reopen our indoor very soon. But speaking to other drive-ins, talking to them, many are planning on going a little bit later than normal. And literally 5 minutes before I got on this phone call, we just found out that Disney's releasing Hocus Pocus and Coco. They're pulling that out of the vault for theaters, indoor and out. So that will certainly make it more desirable, or for operators to remain open. So I think you will see the vast majority of operators probably go at the very least 1, 2, or 3 weeks later. And some are reporting good luck with the other events like the concerts, both real concerts and live in person, and the pre-recorded concerts like Encore Live. So that's I'm hearing that that's helping them as well.
Yeah, that was going to be that's a good lead into my next question, which was, do you see an uptick in, we call it four walls interior, but, a complete field rental for alternative types of events that you've never done in the past?
Some drivers are doing that, some are avoiding. Wellfleet has a policy of no four walls. We do at the indoor. We do that quite frequently in the winter, but in my drive-in, we just didn't do that this year. The number one reason I couldn't do it, and many operators don't want to touch some of these events, is where we're situated in terms of neighborhoods. I could not do a concert because the noise would just carry through. I'm surrounded by 4 neighborhoods. Right. And even a pre-recorded concert, the tendency for people to turn the volume up in their cars quite loudly would invoke noise complaints. So it simply wasn't worth it for us to do it. I do know that many operators did do special corporate events. Many operators did do the concerts. Few operators did go really out of box with some of the other types of situations. We got asked for sometimes to do events, and we researched it, and in terms of some of these gathering laws, the intent was when they allowed the drive-ins to open, one of the things they had in mind was they knew that largely no one knew anyone else. So there wasn't going to be propensity for people to get out of their cars and try to go visit another car.
Right.
And we did do the graduations, but they were largely monitored and by the school staff. They had, when I did 2 graduations, they had staffers on every row making sure the kids were staying in the car. But you have to be careful as an operator in these regulations. If you're going to have an event and it substantively is crossing the line between what is now an outdoor gathering, you could get in trouble. Like in Massachusetts, the outdoor gathering went from 100 people down to 50 after a couple of violations. Nothing to do with drive-ins, but went from 100 down to 50. So you have to be careful with some of these events if they cross the line between what's showing a movie and what is a meeting or an event. So, but yes, I can say that many operators did do alternate types of functions, and many were successful with it.
Okay, so you mentioned you had speaker poles. That certainly limits your, restriping of the lot, for sure. Would you make any changes there? Or you think you pull those out?
No, I wouldn't. I'm one of the few drive-ins that still has speakers in 100% of our spots.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
We've actually kept it for a PA system for a flea market well before there were cell phones, and warned the vendors of incoming bad weather and lost kids and the like. So it actually was more important to the flea market than the drive-in for the better part of 20 years. Fast forward to today, it's less important for the flea market now because nearly all the vendors have cell phones, and you don't have as many lost kids and stuff now because even the kids have cell phones. So the PA system actually went away, and simultaneously the drive-in vehicles got less and less friendly in terms of the radio staying on, the lighting up like a Christmas tree when you try to light the radio on.
Mm-hmm.
So we found that the speaker usage actually skyrocketed in the last few years. So we invested some money in it, got a new QSC ISA 800T amplifier. Thank you, QSC, for making that. and it increased the frequency response and some other tweaks, and found a new source for cones, and it sounds pretty good. So it's mono, but for many customers it sounds.
That's okay for a car, though.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's why we would never go through I'm 100% paved, so that would be impossible for me, not practical for me to respace the poles.
Yeah.
But that was one of the number one positive things in reviews that kept coming in, was the fact that we had one full space in between each car, which ended up being 12 feet versus what you could technically get away with 6. It actually was a favorite. Customers felt very safe. That was one of the overreaching comments in the section, was there was plenty of space for them to get out their lawn chairs and still be away from the next vehicle, next party, family, whatever you want to say.
Do you think I like the idea of you're like an entertainment complex where you have the mini golf and you have the indoor and the flea market, all the various things. Is that a big part versus somebody just having a drive-in sitting on property?
Well, mini golf has always been an important additional component. Unfortunately, I did not open mine this year because we had some emergency construction or snack bar, and I had to use my ice cream shop, which is attached to mini golf, as my snack bar for the half of the summer.
Wow.
Which I could not open a mini golf and have social distancing. So I didn't open it this year, but we took advantage of really refreshing it this summer. Planting new grass was sorely needed where we don't have to worry about people walking on it. But long story short, any time you can increase the take on, once you have them on property and try to get, more money from those customers, it's a win. And the flea market is a very good complementary use during the day. I will say that the flea market side of the industry has really suffered under the internet in general, between Amazon, eBay, Craigslist, Etsy, and all the other venues for people to get wares. It's not what it was. It's still very worth it. And I have kind of an eclectic one with being in a tourist area with a lot of special jewelries that you take advantage of, seashells and other unique things. So it's still worth it, but it's not the battleship it was 20, 30 years ago. But again, anytime you can use the property for other uses, I know some drive-ins are doing daytime comedy and other daytime events. Which you don't necessarily need the big screen. You just need to get somebody high up on some kind of a stage with a microphone and take advantage of just the sound system. I know that's worked out. The indoor cinemas when it's obviously wasn't open this year, but when it is open, is a great complementary use for the drive-in, because the show times are not, you have your 7 o'clock show at the cinemas, then some of the staff go down, do the 8 o'clock show at the drive-in, then back up for a 9 o'clock show at the cinemas. So I'm able to save some labor in that regard. And also summer tourists, when it rains, they flock to the cinemas because they can't go to the beaches or anything else. So that part was lost this year, but that is an important component.
Okay, well, we're getting pretty close to the end of our time, but there's a lot of exhibitors out there who are dabbling in parking lot cinema, which is obviously not true drive-in, but do you have any comments for them as far as their foray into your world with drive-ins?
Yeah, no, it's if there's anyone I'd like to see get in this business, is more indoor operators, because they're our brothers, and I am an indoor operator, so I know how it feels this summer to have a part of your business have literally zero revenue and have to pay these legacy electric bills, including capacity charges and everything else. Is ridiculous. That's a discussion for another day. But I like to see them done right with DCI compliant projectors, and and the FM sound is great. The only thing is, if you might want to look out from a liability perspective. I'll give you a small example. One thing that's always been very important in drive-ins, back to I think the original design, but certainly in the 40s and 50s, was something called area lighting. Because if you're going to have people outside of their cars going to the restrooms and the snack bars, you're going to allow them to come and go. Like, some people might want to leave halfway through the first movie because the baby's crying, or some people want to come late to the double feature package and don't care that they missed half of the first movie. You really have to have area lighting around. What that does is it casts shadows when people leave their cars. And if you have a car leaving with just their parking lights on or something like that, they can see the person walking. So little things like that are actually pretty important. Fortunately, in today's world with the solar lights, you can do area lighting pretty cheaply versus the way it was 20, 30 years ago when you had to run wires. And the other thing is one thing that I've had is the body of knowledge that my field crew has with how to get the radios to work in these cars is incredible. I mean, I see them calling down, you know, the more newer staff on the field saying, how do I get the lights off in a 2009 RAV4?
Yep.
And then my field crew manager says, well, okay, you got to turn the car off like nothing else, hold the brake, he has everything in his head. We've tried as an industry to try to put that down on paper, and it's so unwieldy. We actually started a spreadsheet at Utah, and we're going to try to put more effort into it, but that is something that you're going to have to think about if you're going to do a pop-up. Is the lights are going to be a problem, keeping the radios on are going to be a problem. If you don't have a lot of knowledge in that area, you might consider doing rentals, of radios. I hear that the Home Depot and Lowe's types contractor boom boxes that you charge the batteries with work best now versus let's go back 30 years. It would have been a boom box with rechargeable D batteries, but now it's transitioned to the drill battery all-in-one scenarios that work best. But that will be the number one problem. And the problem also, keep in mind, especially this later in the season, is if you're going to do it in a dirt lot, with heavy usage, it can become a mud pit really fast. Many drive-ins have that problem, in the off season. So, I mean, I'm paved, so I don't have that issue, but I know that is an issue in a lot of drive-ins. And so.
All right, some good knowledge for our indoor cinemas. Thinking about the drive-in. Doug, you got any final thoughts?
No, I just appreciate John doing this with us because I think it is so important. They're a valuable partner, and I think drive-ins in so many communities. Well, one thing, there's not many of them around, so per capita, and so they get forgotten. And I think it's truly what's in kickstarting our industry now has been the drive-ins, getting product out there, getting people to start opening again. So I think it's great, and I appreciate his efforts.
Thank you.
This could definitely be the start of a resurgence. So thank you, John Vincent. Thank you, Doug Saban.
Thank you, Frank.
And Ace.
Thanks,
and appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I was muted. So that was some good institutional knowledge from the Utah and some good information on True Drive-In and what the drive-in members need to do and some of the challenges that they face. We've got another drive-in owner, Rick Cohen, who's the CEO of the Transit Drive-In in Rockport, New York, just outside of Buffalo. He's being interviewed by Joe DeMio, who's the director of sales from Cineonic. Cue video.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Joe DeMio, Director of Sales for Cineonic, Director of Sales of icta. Thank you for attending today. With me is Rick Cohen from the Transit Drive-In in upstate New York, Lockport, New York, near Niagara Falls. Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Great.
Good, good. Thanks for participating today. Rick is the third generation, family generation of owners and operators of the Transit Drive-In, which is a pretty amazing thing. So, Rick, why don't you tell us, how did the Transit start? How did it all start?
Well, my grandfather had been in the theater business in the late 1920s in central New York, small towns, and moved to Buffalo in the early 1940s, and they built their first drive-in in 1949. And they built another drive-in in 1950, and they purchased the transit drive-in in 1957 that had already been built by another business operator. And then my father took over the drive-in in 1963, and I took it over in 1987.
Wow. 3 generations. That's amazing. So what are the main differences from when you took it over to now, the changes?
Well, we're multi-screen. We started off with a single screen, and we added our second screen in 93, a third screen in 96, fourth screen in 2001, a fifth screen in 2016. And we wouldn't be able to have multiple screens without improved projection technology. You can't have reel-to-reel with individual car speakers and operate a multi-screen drive-in.
Very true. Very true. Wow. So you've seen a lot, obviously the audio as well as the presentation, obviously, you know, the projection has changed over the years. What would you say was the biggest business situation? I presume it's still families. What's your clientele that normally comes? A lot of repeat customers?
Well, it's going to depend on the movie. So, you know, if you have a horror movie, it's going to be teenagers and young adults. If you have a family movie or a Disney animated movie, it's going to be a lot of families with kids. We try to diversify as much as possible, so we'll have like an action movie on one screen, a horror movie on another screen, a family movie on another screen, a comedy on another screen, so we can try to appeal to as broad of a demographic as we can.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. That's great. So obviously the past 6 or 7 months have been difficult for the entire industry. What have you seen as far as changes there? And what have you done to adapt to those changes?
Well, whoever said operating a drive-in theater during a pandemic was going to be easy, they were lying. It's definitely not something that's easy to do. We try to communicate with our customers as best we can to let them know what our COVID guidelines are. And so we've done all online ticketing, so the entrance is contactless. And we have monitors at all our doors to ensure that people don't enter the buildings without face masks, and limit the number of people in the building at one time.
I see a lot of information on your website, so even before people come, they know what to expect, they know how to participate, they know what to do. That's great. We know it's been a challenge as far as first run content over this time. What have you been playing? What has been received? What's been on the screen?
So we're playing a lot of, you know, great classic films, and actually it's kind of liberating not having to, you know, play 2 or 3 new movies from the studios every week. We kept to, you know, be a little more judicious with our own taste and our own, you know, repertoire. So, you know, Jurassic Park, Grease, Beetlejuice, there's a lot of great retro movies that people will come out to see. And we actually ran Jurassic Park for 11 weeks this summer, and it was packed every weekend.
Wow. Great classic movies. Yeah, what's your favorite?
I've got tons of favorites. It's just too long of a list.
True.
Too long of a list. Yeah, right now we're doing a Lord of the Rings marathon. I love Lord of the Rings movies, and there's, you know, it's a great following. We just finished a Harry Potter marathon that ran for 4 weeks, and it was sold out every weekend.
Wow, that's awesome. So obviously changes, you know, due to the pandemic situation. From a technical standpoint, I know you've done some upgrading and you have some plans. What's happening there?
So, you know, we've been keeping an eye on the laser projectors ever since they were demoed in Rochester about 10 years ago. And, you know, it was really frustrating to, you know, see this great technology that just wasn't ready at the time that the digital transition occurred in the mid-2015s, 2016s. So we held out as long as we could. We went fully digital in 2012. And when the price, you know, became reasonable and we felt that the technology was robust enough, we pulled the trigger on the laser projector this spring. So the 60L from Barco Cinionic was installed in May of 2020, and it's phenomenal. It is a just incredible piece of technology, and you just wouldn't imagine that it would be possible to get that amount of light on a screen that size. You know, our screen size is one of the largest screens in the world.
And how big is that?
4,000 square feet, roughly 100 feet wide and 41 feet high.
Doesn't get much bigger than that. That's pretty amazing. And my understanding is you have an interesting situation where the people on the smaller screens, people watching the smaller screens, are looking at the larger screen and saying, hey, why can't we get that, right?
Yeah, we used to have the problem with the large screen, with a 32B, we can only get so much light out of a 32B due to the technology of the xenon lamps, with a single projector. So our main screen, our big screen, is always, noticeably dimmer than the other screens that were 30 by 60, much smaller. So now with the new laser projector on the larger screen, people are looking at that screen and wondering why the smaller screens aren't as bright. So it's like a reverse situation, and we're going to remedy that by going 100% laser on all 5 screens.
Which is amazing. The first all-laser drive-in. That's going to be just fantastic. Tons of light. That's great.
It's more than just the brightness. It's the contrast. The technology with the laser gives you a darker black that you can't achieve with the xenon-based DLP chips on the 32B. So it just gives a much more dynamic color range and contrast, in addition to the additional brightness. So the picture is just striking when you compare it.
Gotcha. No more bulbs, reduced energy costs. Yeah, a whole bunch of other extras that come with that. That's great. What other, I know you do some local content as well as some alternative content. You've got a good mix of other things as well.
We're doing pre-recorded concerts. We actually had the Buffalo Philharmonic. Sold out 3 screens last week, and that was middle of the week on a Wednesday night. We had a dance recital, pre-recorded dance recital on Tuesday night. We've done graduation events with commemorative videos and just all kinds of sporting events. We're going to be doing Stanley Cup Finals, next week. We're currently doing Sunday night football, Monday night football, Thursday night football. And those are all free admission, open to the public, and very impressive picture to put a football game up on the screen. It's just amazing.
I can imagine. Wow. So obviously you're selling concessions. Is the full concession stand open? Everything? You're not holding anything back? Everything is available?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, good. And you can't advertise some of this stuff, right? There's certain parameters around what you can advertise as far as up on the screen.
Well, to show live sporting events, the first thing is you can't charge an admission fee of any kind. If they find out, they'll shut you down. So after that, you can't advertise the name of the team. You can advertise the name of the city, but anything that's trademarked or copyrighted, you cannot put in your business advertising. So you can say the team from Buffalo versus the team from New York City, but you can't say the actual name of the teams. You can't use their logos, and people figure it out.
Gotcha. Got it. And what is your normal season open from when to when? You're in upstate New York, so I know you get some serious weather up there.
Well, we're in a pretty big metro area near Buffalo, so we can get open near the end of March, early April, and then we'll operate all the way through mid-November, and sometimes even into New Year's and early January.
Wow.
Yeah, if we're lucky, we get a mild winter, we can stretch it out a little bit.
That's great. Wow. What do you see for the future? You're looking that far? Are you just kind of, dealing with today? How's that look?
We're just going week to week. I don't really want to worry about next year. We'll worry about next year when it gets here. I'm hoping there'll be first-run product available from the studios for next summer, and I think everyone is. I think there will be. But, if we have to continue to operate with retro movies, there's tons of great retro movies you can put on the screen and people will show up and have a good time. The drive-in is great, a great experience no matter what's shown on the screen.
That's great. That's true. It's all about the experience. I grew up in New York and spent a lot of time at drive-ins. Well, thank you, Rick. It's been wonderful. Much appreciated. And thank you for all you're doing. The drive-ins have really been leading the charge since the situation. And it's great to see more focus on drive-ins and what you do, because you're obviously still out there. It's a unique experience. More people should appreciate it and get into it. So thank you for what you do, truly.
Yeah, we're happy to serve the community.
Thanks again. Much appreciated. Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Rick Cohen from the Transit Cinema in Lockport, New York. Sorry about that, Rick. Very interesting. I can't imagine seeing a football on a 100-foot wide screen. That would be amazing. Some interesting things with respect to drive-ins, you know, when on alternative events, is that they, you know, instead of applause, you get people honking horns, whereas normally for a normal movie, people honk their horns when it's out of focus or not running right. So anyway, very interesting experience to watch alternative events in a drive-in cinema. So next, we're going to delve into pop-up cinema, and one of the key aspects of a pop-up cinema is a screen, and we're going to be talking with or Jan Ranga is going to be talking with Christian Kramer from AirScreen. Jan is our international vice president of the icta, and Christian Kramer is the founder, managing director, and CEO of AirScreen. Cue video.
Hello everyone. Thanks for having us, Box Office Pro, and thank you, Frank, for moderating the session. We're delighted to contribute here from Europe. I have with me the first contributor, the AirScreen company, and it's Christian Kramer, the CEO and the founder of the company. Christian, hello.
Hello, Jan, and hello to everybody who's watching us.
So could you briefly introduce the company and what you do, please?
I can. We produce the inflatable movie screen. The brand name is AirScreen, and market this product mostly all around the world. The last time we counted the countries we sold to was 125. So our product is pretty much used worldwide.
Okay, excellent. I brought with me a few images, and maybe you could comment on each of the AirScreen locations that we're now going to briefly show. So where is this and what is this?
Here we see a 12-meter AirScreen used for a movie premiere high on a rock in Norway, above the sea that you cannot see here right now, but the sea is on the other side of the cliff, and that was the movie premiere of Mission Impossible 6.
Okay, that's amazing. This is a little bit more conventional.
This is a drive-in cinema in the center of Berlin for a customer that you can read in the middle, and they rented the location and did a drive-in cinema for their clients.
Okay, nevertheless, a pretty large screen. And where is this?
This is, again, an even larger AirScreen that is in the center of Venice. Most people might recognize it's St. Mark's Square. That was a movie premiere for DreamWorks in those days. The movie was called Shark Tale, and that was took place during the Film Festival of Venice.
Okay, so that's a pretty iconic location. Interesting. I'm going to close the images. Thank you, Christian. Obviously, you know, the cinema industry is going through a very turbulent time at the moment. What has been the impact of COVID-19 on your business?
It started, well, the year started pretty normal. The first 2 months have been pretty like always. But then again, in March, everything was pretty much paralyzed. No more phone ringing and no more emails, requests coming in, nothing. So as everybody was waiting to see what are the implications of COVID and how bad is it really, and what's going to happen next, then at the end of March, beginning of April, it again turned around radically into a time where our telephones wouldn't just stop ringing. Over the weekend, all the time, requests coming in at a pace that was unheard of before. So, and from that time on, it went on like this. Pretty busy times for us as the whole world is asking for drive-in cinema screens. That is the way to do outdoor movies at the moment.
And have you seen a shift in customers? So previously you've done a lot of events. Do different types of businesses approach you now?
Well, the shift for sure is before our main focus was open air cinema. And now our main focus is definitely drive-in cinema. So that is the shift. Then I also see a shift that there is a certain normalization in Europe. Meanwhile, other countries are now at the point where Europe was in maybe April or May. So there's a kind of geographical shift also, that some countries are now starting to opening up their markets again.
Yeah. And well, we've seen earlier that the screens are used for different purposes: festivals, pop-up cinemas, drive-in theaters. When a cinema operator now sets up an open-air cinema, are there certain tricks or approaches that he can or she can copy from, you know, the events business, or are the two uncomparable?
I think definitely they can learn from the events business. It's a lot more than just showing the movie. When you do an open air cinema, also drive-in cinema, I think the most important point is, or the most important element is the location. It needs to be not just a parking lot, but it needs to be a really nice location that is attractive to go to. And also, I think the catering is very important, that it must be, or it should be, like food trucks where you have a certain variety, so people come early, have a nice dinner together with their friends, then the movie starts, then there may be a band playing afterwards. So the whole package of watching a movie becomes much wider, and it's a whole night of fun that people go to when they go to a drive-in cinema or a outdoor movie cinema.
So it's on the one hand, it's a different business model. I wonder if you also think that the PR effects are relevant for the cinema owner, because obviously you create a lot more awareness in your local community if you set up an open air cinema.
Absolutely. I think it's very difficult for a normal cinema to hit the title page of the local newspaper. It's kind of impossible to get there. If you do a nice open air cinema or a drive-in cinema with a nice backdrop, our experience is that typically at least the local newspaper features you on the title page. So you get kind of free advertising when you do a decent event in your city. I think that is a very valuable tool to get cinema back in the focus of the people. This is where it needs to go, and especially after these COVID times, or in these COVID times, the cinema operators need to say, we are still there, cinema is still there, and the open air cinema is happening all over Europe right now, and the drive-in cinemas definitely show that it works, and that it's still very attractive to go to the movies, socially distanced in the car, but it is still there and it still works.
Okay, thanks a lot. You mentioned your involvement with cinema operators, and you brought a clip that we watch at the end of this interview. Would you be able to briefly introduce that clip to us?
It's the AirScreen Drive model, a product that we kind of invented, where you have projection from both sides. So instead of here is the AirScreen or the screen, here's the projector. You put the screen in the middle and project from two sides on the screen. By this, you have more variety, and because you can show two different movies at a time. And also it is kind of smaller setup, because the distance from the last row to the middle of the square to the screen, and then the last row here to the middle of the screen, is half. So it's more economical, it's more variety, it has many advantages for people who want to try drive-in cinema. We found this very successful, and people like this product a lot.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll roll that clip after the interview. Christian, thanks so much for being with us today, and it was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, and I wish everybody a safe and good time.
All right, thank you very much, Jan and Christian. Fantastic interview there. It was great to see the air screen in action. Certainly a strong element of what we use for some of these pop-up cinemas around the country. So next, we're going to be talking with or Jeff Kaplan from NEC had the opportunity to talk to Rolando Rodriguez, who's the CEO and president Marcus Theaters, and discuss their parking lot cinema. Cue video.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Kaplan. I am National Sales Manager for NEC Display Solutions. And with me is Rolando Rodriguez, Chairman, President, CEO of Marcus Theaters, and Vice Chair for National Association of Theater Owners. How are you today, Rolando?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jeff. Good to see you.
Awesome. So we appreciate this. We're going to discuss the parking lot cinemas and drive-in cinemas, and Marcus has played a very large part in that during these hard times. If I can ask you a few questions, the first one, pretty simple. What were your original goals in opening a pop-up drive-in, and why did you call it a parking lot cinema?
Sure. So first of all, a big shout out to all of my friends in exhibition out there. Certainly miss all of you, seeing all of you in person, and hopefully we'll be seeing each other soon. Look, I think that first of all, we started this drive-in concept and called it the parking lot cinema for several reasons, from our perspective. First and foremost, if you think about the time period, it was dealing with the virus, right? And entertainment options were basically non-available. In fact, people couldn't attend the restaurants, they couldn't go to retail stores. And so here was an opportunity for us to do a couple of things, bring back nostalgic, and it's a very nostalgic experience that we all had growing up as kids, at least in my age group, of going to the drive-in. And so when you think about something that you could do with your immediate family in the car, in a safe environment, and watch a movie, that was a big component of it. Second, there were really no other options for consumers to go out there, and we felt that we provided that nice entertainment component, as many drive-ins did across the U.S. Now, why we called it the parking lot cinema is, frankly, it was kind of a nice touch of reminding consumers that we were tied into the actual indoor theaters. So we did this right outside of our existing theaters, and really a great brand reminder for consumers. Finally, and I think a very important one for our entire industry, is that we have to remind consumers about the product that we sell. And this was a great opportunity for consumers to remain connected with going to the movies, and frankly, at least for the Marcus Theaters, connected to our brand identification that we felt was very important.
Very good. What were some of the challenges you faced when you opened up the locations?
Many. It's interesting because you don't really think about all the dynamics that are associated with putting a drive-in together. And I have tremendous respect for our friends out there that actually run drive-ins. Number one, we obviously had to create new ticketing system approaches. At the same time, it gave us a great opportunity for us during a difficult time to test all of our safety protocols. Now, that was critical. We had to test our health and safety protocols and put them in place to ensure that there was the safe distance, the sanitation processes were in place, the ability for consumers to purchase food on a distance basis, the consumers to purchase the food online, the ability to, in essence, go in and utilize our restrooms inside of our facilities. And then, by the way, we had tremendous help from great friends from Strong, and in particular, want to thank Ray Bugner, who really helped us out in helping us set up not only the screens, but obviously the technology necessary to be able to execute it. So again, it was the sound, it was the sight, it was the ability to set processes and systems, ingress, egress points of view. So it was really creating a new business opportunity in a parking lot.
Wow. And so you put all this together, and would you say it was a positive success? It met your needs?
You know, I feel that it was a very positive success on many fronts. I think, while not all of them, and we put 5 of them together from our perspective. While all of them did well, you know, there were obviously some that did much better than others, and it depended on, you know, the particular area of coverage and the consumer base, and obviously the film product that we were playing. But I thought it was a great success because it kept our associates and our customers connected to our brand. It kept our associates and customers connected to the movie going experience. And I would say financially, it also did well. So when you couple all 3 of those elements together, we feel really good about how this opportunity played out for us.
Now, you're in a wonderful position where you're also vice chair of NATO. What were some of the things that you've been working on to help the industry through this pandemic?
Well, certainly, you know, I would start out, Jeff, by telling you that I'm certainly honored, and it's a tremendous pleasure to serve in the NATO board as vice chair. We have an incredible board of directors, and John Fithian, who's our CEO, and his team do an incredible job. So if you think about our, you know, NATO work, in particular over the course of the past 6 months, has been instrumental in many different ways. And this is a combination of a lot of great people working together. But, you know, it starts out with the fact that we needed to start our lobbying efforts. So, you know, lobbying efforts that were really intended to support many of our exhibitor friends out there with the governmental agencies on how do we get them financial support, loans, and capability to access and ability to open their markets and their theaters. So there was an incredible lobbying, and continues to be, by the way, incredible lobbying efforts that are occurring. Secondly, we needed to think about how do we reopen this industry, right? And not only reopening this industry and the theaters, and how do we connect with our consumers, connect with our politicians, you know, in the different communities, and the healthcare providers. And that brought us to really a very important aspect of what we've been working on, which is Cinema Safe. And that's basically the safety protocols that NATO developed, working with epidemiologists, experts across, looking at obviously best practices in other industries, and putting together a safety program that has been very well accepted, you know, by not only our membership. In fact, we have over 380 companies that have joined and said, hey, we're part of this protocol system, over 33,000 screens that participate in this. And this is critical because we're sending in one voice to our consumers that our industry is very serious about their health care, you know, their safety, while providing an incredible entertainment experience. And that really leads me to the last thing that I think it's important that NATO's working on. And by the way, it's not all encompassing because we got a lot of things going on. But the last one is important for NATO and really all of our membership to remind our consumers, you know, through our public relations efforts, through our marketing efforts, that we are a fun business. And I got to tell you, in a time period when our society and our country is going through a lot of pain, you couldn't ask for a better entertainment experience that's, you know, that is going to look after their health, their safety, and provide fun. And I think the word fun, you know, is one of the things that we need to concentrate on quite a bit. We are in a great industry, a fun industry, and we need to make sure that our consumers and frankly our associates feel good about going back to the movies.
Rolando, that is just a wonderful thing. Very well said, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here.
Take care, my friends.
All right, some good information from Marcus Theaters and NATO as well. And let's see if we can get back to my slides real quick. Just a quick glimpse of what, oops, I got it. What Marcus was doing. That's a picture of their their screen on their side of their building for parking lot cinema. So next, Jeff did this is our last interview, but Jeff did another interview with Jason Ostro. This has a little bit of buzz in it on Jeff's side, but Jason's loud and clear. You should be able to hear it well, but this is Jason's foray, or Star Cinema Grill's foray into a parking lot cinema, where they set up a couple of screens in their parking lot. And I know how setting up screens in a parking lot can be in the middle of summer, because that's why I've got a sunburn right now. So anyway, moving on to Jason Ostro, and as interviewed by Jeff Kaplan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Kaplan at NSC Display, National Sales Manager. And with me right now is Jason Ostro, Vice President of Development of Star Cinema Grill, a Houston-based dine-in theater. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hey, Jeff. Good. How are you?
Good. Jason, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to ask you a few questions. You did a pop-up drive-in theater. What were some of your original thoughts in opening an outdoor theater to your operation?
Well, we really wanted to try the drive-in theater early on during the shutdown, but unfortunately, due to kind of lack of resources of all my team furloughed, it kind of just sat on the back burner for a while. And once we reopened the theaters and we weren't doing the levels of business that we wanted, we said, you know what, our people are back. Let's try to put this thing together. So actually, I still have never even been to a drive-in other than the one we created. So we kind of just figured it out on the fly. We built some structures and turned them into screens, and figured out the technology side, and it's turned into a really good success. Every show so far has been a sellout 2 weekends in a row. It was a lot of work and a lot of hours and a lot of trial and error, but it was a successful endeavor, and we're working on number 2 and number 3 right now.
That's wonderful to hear. So when you were a child, you never went in a station wagon, backed up to the screen, and
I never had that experience, so no. And it was funny when we were trying to figure out the drive-in, because it started with just me, and then I brought my my sight and sound guy in and my marketing guy in and things like that. But I just kind of looked at pictures on the internet and envisioned how you would do it, and kind of just figured it out, like a lot of other things we do within our company as we're growing. But my first drive-in experience was at Star Cinema Grill.
That's wonderful. In one of your earlier plans, you chose to sync up 2 projectors about 30 feet apart with 1 FM transmitter. What were some of the challenges in getting that system to work?
So that is what we're doing right now. We never took it to the finish line and actually got the projectors synced together. So we kind of make it work. So we're running a laptop for each projector, and we put the laptops right next to each other, and we put our fingers on the play button and say 1, 2, 3, and we hit them. And actually, we made a little countdown. That's the first thing that hits the screen, so we can make sure the projectors play in sync. And it actually works really well. The reason I didn't end up running the cables to connect the 2 projectors and things like that is that we're bringing all of this stuff out every day and then breaking it down at night and bringing it back inside. So the amount of cabling and things that I could minimize, and we actually have cars parking in between the 2 sheds that the projectors sit in, and so I also wanted to minimize tripping hazards and just things that could kind of be in the way. So we are using 2 projectors 30 feet apart, and we are syncing them together. We are running it off a 1 FM transmitter. We're just kind of doing a lot of things, quote unquote, manually.
Okay. So can you share some of your technological obstacles when presenting with moving an indoor theater outside?
Yeah, I'd say obstacle 1 was power. So we tried a couple different things, and we ended up with a great solution after having a couple hiccups the first week or so. So power was number 1. 2, safely transporting close to $100,000 worth of equipment inside and outside on a daily basis. There's bumps, there's cracks in the concrete, there's it's a lot to think about. So strapping all that stuff into carts, we rigged up a whole bunch of different things to make everything secure. Also humidity, heat. It's 100 degrees in Houston with 100% humidity. So how do we stop the equipment from overheating or condensating and things like that? So it was a lot of environmental elements that we had to work through, which we did. You know, we started in open tents where the projector's in, and we ended up in closed sheds with portable air conditioners that are dehumidifying and conditioning the air. And, you know, so it's really evolved into a semi-sophisticated setup on the outside. But those were some of the major challenges we went through.
Did you have any zoning issues with
Nope.
going outside?
No, Houston's easy. I mean, we're in Harris County for the first location, and I built the structures, and an inspector stopped by and said, "Where's your permit?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't know I needed a permit." So I had to get the actual screen structures permitted, but since we're doing it in our parking lot with our facilities and everything else, there was no additional anything needed from the cities.
And you built 2 screens. You didn't put them on the side of the building.
Right. So the way our building, and we're gonna have to do the same thing as we go into our next drive-ins. You know, we're using our own parking lots, and we have lots of landscaping and trees and light poles, and just, you know, the way the parking lots are designed, we don't have a lot of great opportunities to shine them on the building. And I also don't want to build a massive 40-foot wood structure during hurricane season, which is why we've broken it up into 2 screens, which also gives me the ability, if we keep doing this for a long period of time, to show 2 different movies out there at the same time. And so that's kind of why we went the route we did. Not the easiest way to do it, but the way we felt most comfortable doing it.
Okay, and one of the last questions I want to ask you, when you opened up this weekend, you actually had your outdoor theater and your indoor theaters working at the same time. On an average, was one format more adopted than the other, and where do you think it was?
Well, I'll tell you, so this weekend was actually our second weekend. We're going into our third weekend this weekend. And if you look at the top grosses of the facility, including the drive-through, Tenet Inside was #1, but my #2 top grosser was Tenet Drive-In, followed by Despicable Me Drive-In, followed by Jurassic Park Drive-In, followed by the rest of my inside things. So we found that even for the first show of the drive-in, which is at 8 o'clock, that show has more cars / people in it than my inside show. But I also have 6 showtimes inside to the 1 showtime outside. So, you know, kind of not a fair comparison there. But listen, if I'm selling out every show of the drive-in at 50 cars, then it's doing what we wanted it to do. And I don't think it's eating from my attendance on the inside. In fact, a lot of people that come to the drive-in say, "Oh, you're open inside?" And that was part of our strategy of even doing the drive-in. Even if it's not profitable, it's bringing awareness that the theater is open and that we're here and there's something to come do. And that was part of our mentality behind doing the drive-in.
Absolutely. Jason, I can't thank you enough. We appreciate your time in doing this interview.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So, you know, these pop-up cinemas are definitely show that where there's a will, there's a way. For those of us in cinema who want to continue, I certainly feel that we're going to see more of that. So, you know, thank you for being with us, everybody, today. The pandemic shutdowns have reminded us that drive-in and pop-up cinemas are here for us and are a great way to see a movie. Pictures are brighter than ever, and the FM sound is great. Having recently spent time at a drive-in reminds me of visits decades ago. Indoor cinemas have been reinventing themselves every decade or so with advances in technology and presentation. In a post-pandemic world, I think drive-in cinemas will see a resurgence where the old is new again. Not only will there be a resurgence in drive-ins and parking lot cinemas, they just might reweave themselves back into commonplace of the movie-going experience worldwide. Thank you to all of our interviewers and guests, Box Office Pro, and to all of you who put this webinar together. You can visit us, ICTA, at our website, icta-web, and you can see all of our contributing members and have links to their websites where you too can put together a drive-in, a full drive-in or a pop-up cinema. Thank you all for joining us today.